United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We need a motion to approve the agenda as presented. So moved.
Second.
Trustee Eska?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Lapijanis?
Aye.
Trustee Andalou?
Aye.
Trustee Wilbur?
Aye.
Trustee Price?
Aye. And then we need a motion to appoint trustee Yeska as president pro tem, please. So moved.
Second.
Trustee Price?
Aye. Yep.
Trustee Eska?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson?
Aye.
Trustee Lapijanis?
Aye.
Trustee Andalou?
Aye.
Trustee Wilbur?
Aye.
Okay. All yours, Amy.
Well, this is a continuation now that we produced it originally. There was, maybe more than that, right? So
Nine submitted,
9 submitted. And
4 interviewed.
4 interviewed, and Trustee Will Brandt and Lapijanis, you were involved with those interviews. correct?
Yes.
So, down to 2.
Yep.
And first, Courtney Clark, right?
Yep.
And someone who's out there.
Somebody is remote, Jim McLaren.
Yeah.
Jim McLaren is remote, and I'll turn it over to Brian, and the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Well, appreciate you this nice cold evening joining us today. Just for sake of keeping it more interactive, if you have any questions, feel free to interject, to ask along the way. We've got about 15, 20, 30 minutes of content depending on how we sculpt it. So feel free, don't wait till the end. If you have questions you want to throw at us, feel free to do that. So,
Would you like to introduce the rest of the
yep,
team?
we're going to do that
Okay.
right now. Thank you, sir. So Brian Cronewater, I'm the principal with Corrigan Clark, and thrilled to be here.
I'm Greg Goebel. I'm the director of design. Been doing this for 30 years. I'm glad to be sitting here tonight.
Nathan Malott, project manager with Corrigan Clark.
Daryl Shaw,
And our partner, Jim, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Jim McLaren from McLaren Wilson Laurie, and delighted to be here in spirit with you tonight.
You guys hear that okay? Fine?
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, Jim's out in Raleigh, North Carolina. He's got a special assignment. He couldn't make it today in person, but we've known Jim a long time, and he's a fantastic partner. So quickly, a little background on Corrigan Clark. We are a Midwestern-based full-service architecture, engineering, and construction firm, headquartered in Aurora, Illinois, with an office in Chicago, a large office in St. Louis, one in Cleveland, and Lafayette, Indiana, as well as some offshoots in Sawyer and Davenport. One of the things a little unique with us, besides integrated delivery, is we have an office in Madrid, Spain. Now you might ask, why would you guys have an office in Madrid? It really has allowed us to be very capable of doing work on a 24/7-hour basis. I think Nathan, you can attest and say why that's important to our clients.
So when we have projects that have tight time frames, we actually have the ability and work through our process where our Chicago teams or our US-based teams can interface with our Madrid office at the end of our days. They pick up the project, continue working on it with the same goals that we had during the day, and then when their evening comes up and our day starts, we have a process of trading it back. So we can literally be working on a project 24 hours a day, and that really helps us hit some of these tighter time frames that we see sometimes.
Jim McLaren?
Okay, well, McLaren Wilson Laurie is a firm that's devoted entirely to mission critical architecture. We've completed forensic science laboratories, police stations, courts, 911 centers in 46 states and have about 550 completed buildings, many of which are in Illinois. And we've had the joy of working with Cordigan Clark on a number of those projects. Some of them are listed there for your reference, but it's all we do. We have offices in Virginia and in Arizona, and we do work from each of those locales.
Jim, I think, yep, public safety design best practices. You want to take her away?
Okay, well, really, when we start looking at a new facility for first responders, public safety buildings, we have a lot of things that we have to get right. There's a lot of standards, accreditation standards, precedents. We have to understand how the optimum workflow works within this type of building so that we can make sure that the architecture drapes function, not the other way around. There's a lot of change in the way this type of these services are being delivered, both in equipment and infrastructure and in operations. So we need to really be looking at how to make them as flexible as possible. And since you throw away the key when you open the building, they have to be very durable because they're going to get used 24/7 for 365 days of the year. You don't ever turn them off. So we look at them from a very holistic standpoint to make sure that we anticipate where we think that they're going to be growing, and we try to design them in that fashion. When we work with our clients, one of the things we always try to do is figure out what the overall drivers of a new building are going to be. And the things that keep showing up are the general topics above. How does this building reinforce our devotion to providing excellence to our clients, to our citizens and the people that come to visit West ND? How does the building make it clear for people to use and operationally appropriate for the people using it? Next, please. Okay, then we start looking at what we find out when we talk to the staff in those buildings. How do you want to work? And it's interesting because there's a differential between each of the generations that work in these buildings. And when we talk to the people that are going to inherit the building, for the most part, they tell us, oh, well, if I had my druthers, I'd do my report in a Starbucks, but people keep coming up to me and asking me for directions, so I can't get anything done. So what we started to look at was, okay, how do we create this environment where they get to work in the type of environment that encourages them to use the skills that they have, because they're technologically incredibly savvy. I mean, I joke that my son will text me from across the room before he'll come speak to me. So we have to provide a space that reinforces that type of activity in future. Next, please. We also find that the spaces need to be designed so that they reinforce the fact that everyone is working as a team. So we always joke that we're trying to create buildings that don't have any halls or silos. They flow from one space to another. So this picture, for instance, shows when you walk into this station, there's a report writing room right in the middle, a quiet breakout space where they can do continuing education. Mailboxes on the left, lieutenant's offices down the way with a briefing room on the end, and on the right they go to their locker room. One of the things you notice is there's no hallway. Everything flows off of one space for their continued use, so it reinforces ways for people to work together as a team. Next, please. This also gives an example. This is a recent building we just finished in Texas, in El Paso. Same kind of situation here. Officers, it's a large number of officers report here, but they have their open workstations to finish up their reports, many of which now they start in the field, generated in part by AI from their Body One cameras. But they come and they clean them up, they do projects here, and behind them in those glass windows there under the mural is their sergeant. So basically everybody's working together in a single unified environment. Next, please. Then we have to reinforce the fact that we really want buildings that contribute to health and wellness and are safe. Those are constant recurring themes with people. Am I going to have a safe place to park my personal car, a place to work out? Those sorts of things become really critical. So we just encourage, trying to sort out ways to do it. This is a workout area in one of our projects. You can see it looks out to the private vehicles parking area for officers and a basketball court. So literally, we can bring the windows all the way down because it's completely open back there to the secure zone that only the officers can get to. So it really works to reinforce that sense. When we get to safety, this one, if you click on it, you'll see, yeah, there you go. We have to be very careful because the reality is the buildings we design have to reinforce the fact that sometimes people aren't really supportive of the mission we have. So we try to design them in such a way that we use the very structure of the building to provide safety. So in this case, in Arlington Heights, 3 days before it was supposed to open, someone drove a car into the building at close to 70, 80 miles an hour. But the barriers that we designed for seating and such took the brunt of it. There was not even a window that needed to be replaced, but our brand new camera system caught it all. Next, please. The last is we're looking for resiliency, things that allow for people to continuously be able to work in a building for long hours a day, comfortable spaces, flow-through spaces, places that contribute to the health and safety, in addition to just looking at the sustainable nature. This one you can see a lot of wood in it because the building was constructed out of cross-laminated timber, which is a very, very sustainable construction method. That's, I believe, take this from me.
It makes me more comfortable, I guess. So I'm just going to stand up and say, so just to kind of continue with what Jim mentioned, we look at the sustainability not from the terms of just getting a certification or any other certification out there. We kind of look into the building enclosure, the building orientation on the site, the stormwater management. So all of these other aspects that you can see, we kind of focus on those because we think those are the key factors to achieve not just the long-term savings for the building and for the municipality, but it also kind of gives us a healthy environment, as Jim was referring to, and more resilient buildings. So we would start with, so as you can see here, what we would typically do is start starting off with the building enclosure in understanding the viewpoint of the wall, and that would allow us to generate then establish the R values required for the building and what would be the wall assemblies, the roof assemblies, and so on, which will then in return help us understand which is the better mechanical system that we can use, the daylight penetration, the indoor air quality. We will also work with the team and your staff to kind of come up with the an established owner's project requirement, which will help us determine and also for you in the future to kind of feed that into different projects and come up with a sustainable solution. And then lastly, we will also work into implementation and commissioning and make the end user understand the importance of data collection, which because of the operations, that would lead into a better environment and long-term savings that we were talking about. So with that, I'll let
Thank you. Nathan.
I'm gonna stand as well. So our design approach really starts with the foundation based on communication. It's really important for our municipal and our public safety projects that we have a really good process for communication with the whole team. There's a lot of stakeholders involved. There's a lot of uniqueness to the project itself. So it's really critical that we set up a reoccurring meeting with our team starting on day one to cover a lot of things that we need to address with you as a group and share that information between the design time and the user side. There are other things we have going on. We are open to visioning meetings. We can incorporate the community with those to gather information from the community at large. We could also do specialized community meetings. For example, with Lake Forest, we actually did a city manager's advisory committee. We met 3 times with them during the first few stages of design through direction that we're going with the project, and also to talk about finances, because there's a big question about the money on the project. Are we on budget? What decisions are we making? That all is important to that group, and that really springboarded a lot of good decisions that we had towards the end of the project. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. But for the general stakeholder group, what we like to do is set up a reoccurring, every 2 weeks, we sit down, usually it's virtual, sometimes we meet in person, depending on what we have to review. But we have this standing every 2-week meeting where we are reviewing some of the challenges we're finding in the design. We're looking at some of the refinements we made from the previous meeting. And we're also usually tackling a new topic each time so we can design this holistically. Jim's team is involved in those meetings with us as well, so we can get into specifics for various components. We're talking about holding, we're talking about processing, evidence, these kind of things all require some attention so that we're really making sure we get the full picture. Through those meetings, we do start developing a shopping list of design options. As part of our target value design process that Brian's going to go into a little bit more later in the presentation. But on our design side, what we work on is really trying to create a list of what the project can have. We develop a matrix of need-to-haves and want-to-haves. And those are things that help us define and prioritize with the stakeholder team what's going into this building, what are things we know we need to have, and then what are things we like to have. Working with our estimating group and our construction management side team that has a really strong foundation in looking at real-time numbers. What we look at is this reoccurring process of working with the stakeholder group, and then during that 2-week interim, we might take some of those challenges and discussions we had, and we start putting some design work with our integrated group, including our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, our structural if needed, and then we get information over to our estimating and construction side. They review it for constructability and also for impact on cost, so that by the next meeting, 2 weeks later, we have information that we share that the team can make an informed decision. Do we want to proceed with this? Is it that high low priority, or do we need to table it and put it on the wish list for future consideration as the budget develops? This happens every 2 weeks, and through that process, we can get a really well-defined scope of work that everyone's on board with, as well as a really solid number that we feel confident about going into bid opening time. Because what we want to do is remove the risk to the client for bid opening surprises and having to look at value engineering processes, which no one enjoys doing. We like going through the design process fully so we don't have to do value engineering at the end.
I'd like to pound on that for a second. Telling people you're going to deliver something to them and then taking it away later on because you didn't track numbers in the right way early on is the worst possible thing that can happen. You take all the impetus out of what you're doing and deflate people, and that's the last thing and Brian's going to talk at length about how that works with us.
Real quick example from Lake Forest of that shopping list approach. Option 1 on the left, that was what was in the program. It's an existing building. We were going to place a firing range in the basement of the existing building space, which currently was a parking deck, heated parking deck area. It's actually pretty expensive real estate to convert to a firing range, but the original program and original discussion, this is where they thought they could put it. We came back to them to point out it's doable. Option 1 can work, but there are going to be some cons. Like we listed, here's what works, here's what doesn't. So they asked us, can you look at some other options so we can see what it might take to do a different approach. So through that community meeting group, we developed option 2 and option 3. Option 2 being a standalone building on the site. It would give them a lot of what they were looking for, but it had a pretty hefty price tag. Option 3 was through a conversation with some of the community members about the idea of expanding a small addition we were already planning to do, but expanding it to include the firing range at a local level to help offset some of the additional foundation costs. And working with our CM team side on the estimating constructability, we found that actually was, well, a little bit more expensive than option 1, not nearly as expensive as option 2, but provide a lot more benefits to the user. And through that process, and I think we had a couple meetings with that community group about this, option 3 was the version we ended up going with, which was not on anyone's radar when we started the project, but through that process and looking at it through cost and schedule and deliverability, we were able to arrive at the solid options that everyone's pretty excited about.
Great, just to expound on target value design and how we do it differently, since we have integrated construction in-house. The difference is we don't have to wait for an outside estimator or partner, construction construction partner to understand cost. We're actively involved with the design team. Our team, we have architects and also builders, and we understand how to basically translate sketches into real estimates and do detailed estimates on it. So that's something we work together with as we're exploring ideas on your project, for instance. If we did this type of a roof on that, what might that cost? If we do this type of construction methodology for this portion of the building, what might that cost? And we can explore and really fine tune those numbers early on. And really it's an active engagement with you guys, because every one of these design decisions has cost impacts. The best thing to do is get that aligned with everybody, all the decision makers early on, and work towards that budget. So we don't have to do, as Greg said, devalue engineering.
What he just described saves us all the time, especially during COVID when material costs were changing on a daily basis almost. He's in the field working and understands where the costs are. So it used to be a metal building that was pre-engineered was the fastest and cheapest building you could put up, but the steel prices got so out of hand that we wound up switching to masonry in order to offset that. And knowing what he knows allows us to make those choices promptly so that we don't figure it out too late in the process.
As I was talking to Chief early on, you built your Station 1, Station 2, which is headquarters, for $3.5 million in 2005. Things have changed. The market has gone a little bit crazy in the last 4 years. We saw escalation in 21, 22, around 15%. That's different than the cost of living. That was 7% level that when you go to construction. We're building about $100 million a year in construction. We understand that, and we've been able to mitigate what that means to a project, so we can plan appropriately for that and not have to deal with devalue engineering or going backwards on the project. Escalation in 2025. We just bid 2 police projects in the last 3 months. Around 6.5% that we have seen in 2025, and a lot of that has been attributed to some of the tariff. You've heard it. There's buzz out there about tariffs. They have not affected everything, but certain components have been affected by the tariff cost. So we were able to manipulate that. But I say, talk is cheap, right? Show me the money. Show me the proof. What have you done that shows you where you've landed in your estimating? I saw in the RFQ that Joe wrote was estimating is a very important component for West Dundee. You see the 3 highlighted projects there, the Yorkville City Hall project and police, which was done in 22, again, during that crazy period. We ended up, you saw that there's 4 different estimating phases: the program estimate, schematic design, design development, and final estimate. What you see there is that comparison on the last column is the variance between the actual bids to what the final estimate was. On Yorkville, we were 0.69% under the budget. Lake Forest Police Headquarters, which was just bid a couple months ago, it's a $25 million project. You can see the kind of progression of this different estimating that we were, trying to adhere to. We went out for bid, like I said, about 2 months ago. That came in at 0.38% below our budget. Sugar Grove Police Headquarters, which is a total gut and addition for that project, a little smaller scale, which are even harder to make, hit your numbers because there's a lot less latitude on that. But that came in at 0.9% under our budget. So we're able to say confidently, when you hire us, you're going to get accurate budgets. All right, so sorry. Anyhow, how do you do that? And I don't want to belabor this, but the important thing is drive value when you're doing budgeting, drive value in the design. It's still got to be a very attractive looking building, durable, meet your criteria, but let's not spend money where we don't need to spend money on things that maybe don't give you the value. We're the ones to help drive that home. We will be intimately involved with the design team, our construction team, throughout the process. Every meeting we will have an attendee there, making sure we're basically collaborating with our designs, architects and engineers to drive that best value. in-house and contracted service, this was a question that was asked of us during the last interview. We do all this stuff in-house, so you don't have to worry about us having to go outside with another company to do mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. It's all in-house. We control that. Structural engineering, it's all in-house. They are beholden to our team, not some other architect or engineer they might be partnered with. We have a date to meet. They're gonna meet the date because they work for us. That's the difference you're gonna see. Compare the two tonight. We do have a good group here, about 90 architects, 20 engineers, 5 interiors, and about 25 construction. So we can make sure the efficiencies do push down to you guys. The only thing we don't do is we don't do civil in-house. We actually partnered with Pinnacle, which is in town. They've done a fair amount of work in the area. They're our civil engineers. Happy to be part of this. We also have of course, McLaren MWL. That's Jim's specialty. We've done a lot of work together. So we bring them in to help, make sure that we don't have any hiccups along the way. Building security for the holding area primarily, we partner with Correct Electronics, and then the audio visual is someone. Everything else is in-house. Quickly, similar project experience. So this is not our first rodeo partnering with Jim. The purple dots represent all the projects we've done as a team. City of Aurora being the first one, which is a significant project about 20 years ago. But all these other purple dots we've done together. We know how to work together very collaboratively, and almost complete each other's sentences. Corrigan Clark, without MWL, has done the red dots. You can see a list in there of other municipal projects. Then MWL, who has done some other projects without us, is also scattering the Chicagoland area. So we do know how to work together, and there's an example of some of the projects we have. It's important that you have a partnership that knows how to work together. We'll get that with us. Quickly, I want to walk you through Sugar Grove and give you kind of some of the highlights and how that ended up becoming a successful project. We're doing an addition off to the left. The regular building was off to the right. You kind of see the red outline along that. This was a total gut. It used to be police and their village hall were part of this building. They ran out of space. Village administration moved to a rented space down the road. And now police is going to own this whole building. So we had to add on a sally port as well as large evidence storage off to the left. And in doing this, you also need to provide a storm shelter. For today's codes, you need to provide a storm shelter. So we ended up duplicating the sally port as the storm shelter. We added evidence processing, evidence storage to the north of that, and then holdings just to the right of the sally port. So we bring a detainee in, book them, processing them, and then there's some holding cells there. We have a detective area, interview spaces, and then we have a multi-purpose training, roll call, and conference space just to the right of that, right off the lobby. Just to the south of the lobby is all the patrol, duty bags, lockers, patrol riding, and so on and so forth. And then to the right of that is records and the administrative areas. So that's the general floor plan of the project. We did a full, pretty much upgrade to the exterior, new shingles, really improved the entryway, which is very hidden on how that looked, to give it some presence off the road, and added a lot more accoutrements to the exterior. Here's the bird's eye view of what that looked like. And then, like to say proudly, maybe tough to read this, but here's how we got under budget. So these were all the bids we took, the variances between the different bid groups, and how those things shook out in the end to get us just under the budget. They were able to add about $80,000 worth of additional features because we were in a good spot budget-wise. Having that ability by the elected officials to weigh in and add some scope that they felt was appropriate was a great thing for them. At the end of the day, the most important thing, and this is a quote directly from Chief Rollins at Sugar Grove, is this new building will be a tremendous recruitment tool for the agency. They're super excited about it. The staff is super excited about it. They moved out temporarily because we had to take over the whole building to an old bank building that was sitting idle. They're going to be working out of that for about 12 months while we do the total gut and reno in addition to that project. So, Chief, you're going to be so happy when you get a new building.
Sounds construction there. We had our bid opening in October, and came in with good numbers. There's two things I wanted to focus in about this one was process with this. We're looking at ways to improve the existing building, to make it safe for the police headquarters. It's a commercial building, typical construction. There were some areas that we needed to focus on hardening around the building to make it usable. We didn't have to make the entire building hardened, but there were certain areas we identified to help defray the cost. Because if we tried to harden the whole thing, it would be too expensive to do what they wanted to do. So obviously looking at the holding area, processing, sally port, those are the areas we focused on for complete infill of the windows, and then we screen that with a window system with a spandrel panel to make it look similar to the rest of the windows around the building so it didn't stand out. But for the areas where we wanted natural light coming in, for example, this front lobby area, the training area in the bottom right, with those windows, we didn't want to lose the natural light. We actually located a product called Clear Armor. It's an enhanced film that is not only deterrent, it's actually bullet resistant up to certain calibers, and you can pay more money for higher caliber. It works on a sliding scale. We actually took a group of people from the police department, and I think we made a couple of the committee members as well from that committee group, do a demonstration. The gentleman that invented it is actually in Crystal Lake area.
Praise Lake.
Praise Lake. And we actually did a physical demonstration of this material to show them this is something that you could do with this project. Can't do it everywhere, but if we are thoughtful of the spaces we want to protect, we could use that. We added it as an ad alternate because we knew the price was going to be pretty high. I think it was going to be around
250 grand.
just for these particular windows we want to protect. But it was something we knew about early on in the project. We created it as an alternate. We introduced the concept to everyone. So at board time, when bids are being presented and we knew where our numbers were, it was an easy argument to get that added in as an added alternate. So ultimately, the board had the information they needed and they made the decision to add it, even though it did take a little higher than they wanted to be. They felt it was worth that value because a lot of them already knew about it and knew what it could do. That was a real big win for the police department to help utilize this building. The other component that we looked at in our design side was really being considerate of future growth for the building. So it was important to make sure we identify that when buildings grow, when departments and when uses within the department grow, they're not all growing at the same rate. So as we have sort of a landlocked building that did not have a lot of room to do addition, we wanted to make sure we had built in some future growth space for the various departments around the building so that they could expand or contract separately from the whole. A lot of times what we've seen is people add some space at one end or another to say future growth area to be determined. What we do is be a little more surgical with our placement of those square footages. So if we need to expand the control area, we have some extra office area to do that. If we need to expand the records department, we have some area where we can do that without having to do a major renovation or a major relocation of other services. That helps keep everything operational while allowing for some future expansion and growth and not interrupting everybody else.
Just the overall.
The overall, yeah.
So we are the construction manager on this project as well as architect. And bids we showed you came in right on our number. Chief Burke, again, if you haven't talked to him, super happy, we're excited. Jason Winchuk, city manager. They can attest to the process. They were super happy with how the process worked. Integrated delivery. So that said, we just want to quickly highlight a few other projects that we have done with McLaren Wilson Lowry. This was the Aurora project. Pushing on about 20 years old now. And Jim, that still has a lot of, we're actually doing a space needs for them. So ironically, you think, how could they ever grow out of 300,000 square feet? We'll see, but they think they're out of space, so we need to actually do a test on that. And Jim, this is Arlington Heights. Are you there? Jim, can you hear us?
I am having a little trouble hearing you, but anyway, this one's Arlington Heights, which was that building that we showed a little while ago that had that vehicle hit it. The main thing with this project was we had to immerse the building next to their new village hall and on a very tight site bounded by rails and highways. And so they wanted it to maintain a real strict character with the other buildings that it joined on the civic campus. I think it really fits in beautifully. This one is a new project that we just completed in Olathe, Kansas. It had some new, some expansion of existing structure. Worked extremely well, obviously a more contemporary building, extremely approachable, and it worked out just very, very well. Next, please.
So this is a collage of different projects, and I think Greg wanted to talk about design.
This is an important thing, and should be for you. We understand you have a community, and we're designing for you and your community, not for art brothers. I mean, we're architects, we all have our opinions, but what's important about this slide is the variability of the projects you see in front of you, because all of those were designed for a community with their own goals and aspirations instead of ours. So I take a lot of personal pride, we take a lot of personal pride in designing something that will fit in your community and represent you in the way that you need to be.
Which is a great segue to talking a little bit about your project.
So working with police station, obviously there are a lot of unique pieces and parts to the program for that. And Jim's team working with our team, we really do a nice job of capturing all of that, having conversations, identifying the groups we want to work with within those police departments to make sure we're getting the information we need. That means walking with your armor to take a look at his weapons cleanings location, where you need storage, how you're going to be using your range area, inside use, outside use, both. Your fleet storage, how are you going to handle locating vehicles that are going to be stored inside, that are going to be stored outside? How can those spaces be designed to be cost effective and potentially multi-use to really just make your dollar go further and make sure you get as much of the wish list as you can. We've done some preliminary work with the program that we've submitted with the original RFQ. We worked through bubble diagrams, get an idea of adjacencies. But one of the things that we looked at when we started working through the program that you included, you can see items on that right side in that green matrix there. We have some things in orange that are highlighted. What we're looking at here is where the overall square footage of the building might be 35,000 square feet based on the RFQ. We think there's a way to work some of this into a 25,000 square foot police department with maybe a 10 or 15,000 square foot warm storage or warm secured storage building to it, because that allows us to look at different price points. A police station is a harder space. It usually requires a higher cost per square foot, whereas a secured warming storage area has a lower cost per square foot. So if there's some functions like wellness or training, some of the evidence storage or processing, along with your fleet storage, if we can look at that as a separate entity connected to the building, it's all part of one building, but the design of those components can be at different levels from the price standing point to allow us to, again, stretch that dollar and get more into the building as needed.
And that said, doing the analysis, kind of backup napkin on price point of where you were targeting this new police station project, we're confident that we can fall within your budget and still give you a great building.
I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what you just said. That notion of looking at differently at a component of the building that may make it more affordable is an important thing. You have a generous site. We've been led to believe that you were considering a multi-story building, and we can do that. We've done many of them, and we're effective at that. But there are options that are not a multi-story building that will afford you other opportunities. So 3 stairs or perhaps 2 stairs and an elevator cost about $700,000. You could spend that money on something else if you don't do a multi-story building. And frankly, from the perspective of what would go in a basement, we couldn't generate a whole lot of ideas about what program would want to go in the basement. So if you elected to do something not 3 stories, you have more money to spend on other things. What I'm showing you here is not a design. I drew this for you, but I drew it after having looked at your community a little bit. We're familiar with this part of Illinois. We know what neighborhoods here look like. We know what people are comfortable with. This is just an assessment of one of those things that it could be. I think it's an effective realization of something that's arts and crafts architecture that would be consistent with your community, but we can design in any style you'd like us to design it. If you want something more modern to represent yourself differently than you might have in the past, we can certainly do that. But what's important about these, we use three-dimensional tools like this throughout the design process to show you exactly what it is we're talking about. Nothing's gonna sneak up on you. We're gonna show you what it is, how it works, how it behaves, what it looks like, and what it's made out of all the way through the process. And at the end of the day, what we really want is something that will represent you well to your community with the values that they have and can be afforded, because nowadays, tax money that comes from the public is scrutinized very closely, and your decisions are gonna be watched carefully. We're gonna help you get to a place everybody will understand.
So we're nearing the end here. Joe did ask us about project fee structure and schedule. We took went the extra mile and did a full Gantt schedule, CPM, critical path method schedule, because we're designers and builders. One of the things you'll see when you work with us is a very detailed layout of how to go from point A to point B and all the little nuances in between. You have to put a roadmap together so everybody's reading from the same sheet of music. That's something we start with a schedule, and we continually modify it and add to it as necessary. You have a Gantt schedule in front of you guys. I know you can't read this, but we did spend a lot of time working through how this project might be laid out from the start of hiring us to doing all the design components and phases, which there can be more granularity for sure in that. We can add, if there's a committee meeting, special committee meetings, we would add those nuances in here. So everybody's working towards that same sheet of music. End of the day, then, we add all the bidding phases in here. And a lot of times we like to do a fast track bidding because you can get rolling on site work ahead of the full building being completely designed. And that's an approach. Some communities like it, some are maybe a little less apt to want to do it that way. But we can give structured guaranteed maximum prices throughout the process. That's the route Westy would like to go. And then all the construction activities to get this thing started in 2026 and ultimately finish this job. When is it? 2027.
Actually, November.
Yes, gotta get my glasses on because I can't see. So this is a roadmap. We definitely feel comfortable that you can meet these dates and have a new building for Chief. Basic fee approach. So this is something that we had explained previously. Typically, and I don't think this is much of a deviation from the norm on how architecture engineering fees are generally put together. They're generally derived at a percentage of the estimated cost of construction. Typically, that then is fixed at the end of design development, which is about 50% of design. And at that point forward, it's a fixed fee. So if the price goes up because of something, it doesn't affect the fee. The allocations by the different phases are noted below that, pretty common in the industry. And then, can you slide that thing over? The important thing to see that last one there is an opportunity you have if you hire us as both the architect, engineer, as well as construction manager. There are efficiencies that can be realized with that process because we're one in-house team doing the work together. And those efficiencies will generally mean you can save on professional services of between 0.75% to 1%. What does that mean to you guys? That means you get more building, right? Because that fee now goes back into bricks and mortar. That's an important distinction. We ended up going that route with Sugar Grove as well as Lake Forest because they saw the value of going with an integrated delivery.
That upper image on the right side there is an illustration of what I was talking about a little while ago about how the building can look if you wanted to. We're doing that. Jim McLaren and our team is doing that building in East St. Louis, Illinois right now. They wanted to make a statement about modern and moving into the future. That's the element we designed for them. So you can see how variable those choices can be. That will be driven by your values and not ours.
And then Joe did ask one last question that we didn't have addressed before. It's about project delivery, I believe. So there is a traditional called design bid build, which is with a general contractor typically. That's a very linear process. There's a fair amount of risk in that because you don't fully understand the dollar value until the bids come in. Hard to exceed or to compact the schedule in this type of methodology. It's very traditional. It's been going on for many, many years. So we're comfortable working in that model. We can do that. Not saying you have to do integrated delivery with us at all. Construction management at risk, again, you could go with an independent construction manager and have us still participate as architect engineer and do the same estimating process we would do. And you get a second opinion of estimating throughout the process. So there's definitely an ability to compact the schedule and have a construction manager be part of the project. You would not save the 3/4 to 1% because it's not an integrated delivery model in that case. Right, but we would not say you would have to use us for a full-blown integrated delivery. The last one, which we firmly believe that is the best value, allows you to take advantage of one single source entity delivering your project. You don't have to wait for XYZ construction manager or consultant to do the estimating. We're doing it on a continuous basis. Efficiencies of being able to deliver the information to you are there. And you get to build more building because you're saving money.
So you keeping them like the subs on target
Subs
then
will be
too?
directly under us.
Yeah,
Everything's bid out publicly, meets all the criteria for public bidding.
right.
Open bid, transparent, full open book. So all the savings derived from that go back.
Are you providing a GMP then at some point in there, and when does that occur?
It depends on where you want it to happen, frankly. Typically, if it's a lot of times, they'll wait till the bids are in because there's less risk. We know the number, but we've GMP'd it at 50% CDs. It's a matter of managing the contingency.
Yeah, okay.
That make sense? Yeah. Well, I think that is it. So we do have one last slide just to kind of sum things up. Why we think you're their best partner. Obviously, we have Jim McLaren on our team. He's got oodles of resume. You will not make another mistake having somebody who's done public safety with that level of commitment and experience. So we bring that to the table, which is unequaled. Having an integrated delivery option, I think, will give you a better value and save you money to get more building. We'll design your budget. Nothing else said. We guarantee you we will design your budget and happy to put our full faith effort and pocketbook behind it as a guaranteed price. So that's it. One last thing to leave you with. This is Chief Jensen's quote from Yorkville. Again, very happy campers. So we would love to be your partner, and thank you very much for your attention. Sorry we took over time. We're loud, but we're always on time, except
Why it was allocated, so.
Anyone have questions for the team?
So this, the spot we're looking at a lot is basically at where our former Spring Hill Mall was, and we're looking at sort of mixed use in there, residential, commercial. We want it to be very pedestrian oriented. So tell me how you would design this and to be located in such a public space, and how would you design differently than you might more traditional where it's sort of along the highway or side of a standalone facility?
let me just, that's a great question. One of the things that's interesting, because we just found this out about a week ago. You familiar with the Lincoln Mall off Route 30 in Madison?
Yeah.
They tore that down.
Yep.
Probably before they did, before you guys. So we were hired to be their developer to do a master development of that site, to look at multifamily. We're looking at a town center, hotel, a sports tourism complex, and that's about 72 acres. So we look at things with that lens of a master planner. We're not necessarily going to be your developer for this project, but we have that sense of understanding to have contextualization drive our design. And Greg's, I know he's
We didn't wade into that fray in what we drew because we just, dialogue is something we kind of talked about obliquely, but I'm going to hit it harder right now. The dialogue that we have together about these things is what will guarantee your success. And so instead of throwing something at the map and saying we think it sits here, we said, no, we don't know that yet. We need to talk more because you got 70 acres. There's a lot of opportunity there. we're gonna master plan that site, and we'll do some heavy lifting for you that isn't really under our scope, because what we wanna make sure we do is provide you the police station you want, but have it fit into a community where it belongs so that it's an important part of what's going on.
A couple of things just for consideration there would be, just nuts and bolts of the building, again, our HVAC. Separation of some of your entryways and the sequence of sally port as well as release areas, if you consider, so that we're creating some buffer zones, whether it's through berming, using some of the spoils from the site, or landscaping of some kind, and then just spacing and distancing. Lightfall is also a big concern when you have residential population right on top of a police station. So making sure that we're doing some photometric study and keeping lighting contained within the site and not bleeding out into people's yards. Those are all little factors that they seem small, but we hear complaints from residents when lights get changed out, so they feel like their spotlights are really.
Does that answer your question, Tom?
Kind of, just in terms of just integrating police with public, and to be honest, I mean, so my day job, I do site civil kind of work and stuff, and so kind of familiar with this, although I've been involved in one or two police stations, but more, not in this context before, but it's, and Chief would have to be comfortable with this, but how do you, kind of bring the public into the space? We have issues with relationships between the public and the police these days, and how can we make this better, kind of rebuild that relationship and, make it less sort of police, versus.
Yeah, I think one component we've seen very commonly is having a multi-purpose space that's right off the lobby that you can use for obvious training purposes, but also it's a community space. They have Boy Scouts meetings and so on, and it's fully secure from the rest of the police side. Those things are incredible to have that community spirit be articulated in a police building. I think that's a factor that does help soften that connectivity to the community. Gives you that warmth of not off limits, can't come into the police station.
Part of it is how the building presents itself to the community, and whether there's an effective public space adjacent to it, because frankly, your building's gonna be the backdrop for the news people when they show up to do a story about you, and the events that you can host in a public space adjacent to the building that you invite the community into are part of what builds that bridge back to them. So I think that there are choices. Obviously, we have to talk to the chief and all his people and to fit this into how they want to conduct business. But at the end of the day, that's what the dialogue is about, and we're going to have a full one.
Thank you. And then could you talk a little bit about sustainability and kind of the tie between that and resiliency for the facility and, and kind of the business case, if you will, for a sustainable design in terms of, long-term versus short-term costs and those sort of things?
Yeah, so as I said, like it's not about just getting short-term goals here. We would kind of work towards the long term, which is where we would do the energy modeling and analysis, as well as understand the site, because as you just said, the site is huge, and that's a real great opportunity to the thermal energy and use the site towards more, including solar panels, whether on the building or somewhere on the site, and harvest that energy towards more production of the renewable energy. So I think that's the larger conversation again, that as a team we need to have with you guys and fulfill that requirements rather than just a lot of opportunity.
Ultimately, it's an ROI, return on investment. At some point, you gotta study it out and figure out where that, eventually the money makes sense from a return on that. Not everything is a great solution, but so you gotta make some value judgments.
And we don't want to use the boilerplate solutions that would just, mulch on the implementing and designs to make sure that we are not just looking at the boilerplate solutions, but also how it works and impacts the total. That's how we work.
As an example, if you consider the LEED process, it's a valuable thing. It can provide you a lot of benefits, but you can do all the stuff that LEED implies without paying the administrative cost to do it. And so if you offset $150 or so thousand on the administrative cost, that's something else you can pay for and put inside your building instead of just the plaque on the wall.
Right, and we often focus on kind of the construction cost side, to get it in the ground, but we kind of ignore the operational side, and clearly that is the whole picture, so.
Gift that keeps on giving, right, forever.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing too is when you're looking at, when you're talking about energy use for the building, we wanna make sure that we plan in some growth space as things tend to move forward in terms of electrical, make sure we have electrical room that could accommodate expansion. You're not having to relocate things, and enough more sub panels if something for some other program requires more power. So again, trying to make the building resilient so you can do minor changes to big
And it's good, like you said, data collection and end user understanding the functions of the building are very important. We can design it one way, but it's also important that the end user knows how to maintain that building and how to run the operations of the building. Because that is what is going to show the long-term savings rather than the short-term ones. Because building design and the construction cost is an important role, but how it's operated, it's a
Thanks, I got a couple other questions, I want to leave time for other people, so.
Well, do we wanna draw this to a close?
Yeah, so if there's any last questions, I think now's the time to ask.
So the only thing, you talked about stakeholders, so oftentimes we think of stakeholders, or a lot of times it's sort of the public type stakeholders. I think you're probably talking something different, like, police staff and others. So who are you thinking about would be sort of the recommended stakeholder group?
Outside of the internal?
Well, you talked about 2-week meetings, so who would be on those 2-week meetings?
So for those, what we'd like to have would be representatives from the police department, representatives from the village management, the village manager might be busy, but having someone from that side, so if we have the money conversation, they're involved in that. If we're gonna be talking about a specific function of the police department, it'd be great to have that person, that team, attend that meeting, and it's something that we would coordinate in advance. We would spring it in. Next week, we'll be talking about X, make sure this. It's also good to have people from the village engineering side attend, so that they understand what we're talking about putting in this building from a future maintenance and operations standpoint. And then we've also had a lot of success when you don't have to be in every meeting, but when we start getting people involved with permitting and inspection, having them attend a few of these meetings early on, so they know what we're planning. So when we set up some pre-permitting meetings closer to 100% CD, they have a working knowledge of what we've been doing for the last 6 months. That they've kind of helped work us through that system, so our permitting goes much smoother. We did that with Lake Forest, and we sent our stuff in for permit, and came back with, we had 3 comments, $25 million project, and they were all part of the money. That was a successful process, and that, again, identifying who you want, and then working with them to make sure everybody's attending.
And so that group sort of varies through the process, right?
Yeah, there's sort of a core, I think we had a core of 5 people.
Yeah.
And there were usually another 3 to 4 that would come and go. But again, it's all about just giving everyone a heads up. 2 weeks out, we're going to be talking about evidence storage, and make sure everyone's guys there.
And you're gonna wanna integrate a facet of the community in some way as well. So that's the thing we're gonna need some help with, to determine how you create that outreach, but we think it's a critical piece of what's going on.
You mentioned positioning or reconfiguring the space for second floor versus first floor and how that might work. Is the trend now more towards one-story type police stations? And then secondarily, I know you probably meet the standards for ADA, right? And how that works. Is it more costly to adhere to those ADA standards with a 2-story approach versus a 1-story approach?
I would say, Jim, please feel free to chime in, but a 1-story where you have land available is.
one of the things we found is that up to a certain size building, usually we can get more operational efficiency out of a single-story building. But when we do go to 2 stories, we're trying to figure out what operationally wants to have access to the front lobby, to vehicles, to deliveries, those sorts of things. Who has to respond and have direct contact to the public. And once we identify all those functions and then start looking to operational functions on a second floor, we can run the risk of having kind of a big first floor and a wedding cake design. And to achieve that, we've had to add 2 stair towers, elevator machine room, second IDF, extra restrooms. And so we've got a lot of spaces that are duplicated in order to make that work. So, and you then also have to then figure out how you're going to create an environment that doesn't wind up with, street shoe on one floor and dress shoe on another. So, operationally and cost effectively, we look at all the options available to us, because many times on sites they are tight enough that we have to do a second story. But from an operational standpoint, frequently there's a lot to be said if we can make everything work on a single story, both from a cost effectiveness standpoint and ease of flexibility in the future for making changes as well. Trying to put surge space for future growth next to the spaces where they'll be needed. Extra space next to lockers, extra space next to evidence. Those sorts of things are always easier to do on a first floor.
That answers your question, Mark, so it is less costly. In a nutshell.
I think we need to
Call it a day?
call it a day because, just to stay on schedule here.
Thank you.
We covered a lot. It was very thorough. Appreciate your time, and if more questions come up, we can send them to you. And
Yeah, Joe.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as you know, we have a second interview, and I think the board will be continuing our conversation, so.
Fantastic. Appreciate
Thank you
your
all.
time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
think of the question, but then I
Yes, I see it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, you did great too.
The which term?
I mean, it's a,
Take care. Good to see you. Take care.
thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a port of
Good
entry.
questions, thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure, it's a.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you had police issues, and you were there, that's when while you were there.
So part of this, part of.
Sliding around.
That, yeah,
Thank you.
I just texted you back, yes.
Figured, but, sometimes when we have meetings at a different start time, it gets me lost.
Stop and see my dad, and
How is he?
there's always something. He's going to rehab supposedly, but they gotta get his
Oh,
ox.
don't send him to rehab.
It's gonna be a long road, my friend.
The small secure gate in a castle.
It was touch and go.
So I wonder
The
what's-
Sally part or the port part or both?
Yeah, I wonder if the port you can kind of see, but how the Sally part.
I think it's from the left.
Turn, something different.
Well, it probably started out as a different word, but became Sally. You know,
Maybe, right.
it might have been something longer.
Aye. Good evening.
Sure. It's a cold night, we want to make it warmer.
Five, I need another chair.
Maybe we should have popcorn now. Where's the cookies and the popcorn? Cool. Two daughters? Yes.
At least the law was there to stop you in case you were gonna go all the way back.
Well, welcome. Thank you for being here this evening, and you already know you're one of two. We're down two, so whenever you're ready and you want to do introductions and whatever, and if you want to present first, and then we can ask questions later, whatever works best for you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us today. When we were here a few weeks back, we definitely didn't have all this snow, so a little different, but you guys are doing a great job keeping everything clear. If you got any, no problems. We are Williams, the Williams Architects team. We'll introduce ourselves and our roles here in a moment. We've got about 25, maybe 30 minutes of presentation, including some thoughts on the design and the site for your facility, but we certainly want to make sure we are able to answer any questions you have and clarify what we believe we can bring to the table for your project. But just a quick agenda. We'll introduce ourselves and the team, just tell you a little bit about how we approach municipal projects in general and police projects in specific. We want to touch a little bit on our process and why that matters and how it's unique. We want to talk about our police station experience. One of the things that's very unique about Williams is that all of our police station experience is in-house, using our own knowledge, our own architectural knowledge that we've earned over the last few decades. You've asked us to provide details on fee structure and talk about construction approaches. We have some thoughts there, but mostly we want to get to your project and the ideas that we have. So we'll try to get through these introductions here in fairly short order. So the five folks you see in front of you are the five folks who will lead this process, at least at first. We are also joined by a consulting team that is selected specifically for this project. Williams Architects is an architecture and interior design firm. We select consultants for other disciplines that are well matched to each particular project and each particular project needs. So got a lot of great consulting engineers as part of our team that have a depth of knowledge in not only municipal facilities, but police facilities. My name is Andy Dogan. I'm one of the managing partners of Williams and our chief operating officer. I'll be the principal in charge for the project, making presentations to you as the village board. I've been, my first job was in 1995. I drew up the St. Peter Lutheran Church church out in Gilbert's on Galligan Road. But been doing this full-time for almost 28 years now, worked on over 50 municipal projects. I've spent my entire life in and around the Fox Valley. I'm an Elgin resident now. I grew up going to Elgin High School. I spent a lot of time at this mall about 33, 34 years ago. This project in this area is very near and dear to me. One of the other things I like to mention is that I do understand your perspective as in what you're thinking about and what your concerns are as elected officials, because I'm one myself. I'm an elected member of the Board of Education in Central 301. We're currently going through this exact same process of planning for the future, and hopefully my experience on the other side of the dais can also help understand your perspective and inform the project.
Thanks, Andy. My name is Mark Brody. I am going to be the project manager for the project. I've been practicing architecture for, I hate to say it, 35 years, since 1990. So I've got many municipal projects under my belt, a lot of police, village hall, public works, fire station, things like that. You can see kind of a list of some of them up on the screen there. I've married 2 boys. We're all University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana people. The youngest one's a senior down there. The other one's graduated, so we're active in that. My wife and I met in marching band back in the day. We were just reminiscing about some band stories in the lobby. So she was a trumpet player, I was a drummer, so it all worked out. And we've got a lot of hobbies. Like to travel, go to our place, Wisconsin.
facilities. I like to emphasize once again, all of our police projects are completed with our own in-house expertise without the use of specialized consultants. 76% of our firm are licensed architects. It's a big deal to become a licensed architect. It requires advanced education, several years of internship, and a passage of a multi-part exam. It shows commitment to the profession, and we're really proud of that track record. We like to say we'll talk a little bit about sustainability. We will be as sustainable as you want us to be, and we're also very, very interested in assisting you in whatever way makes sense with engaging the community around your project and providing information. The folks you see in front of you are just part of a 22-person dedicated municipal team that we have at Williams. Sometimes folks ask me about the only guy with the dark background. That's Logan out of our Columbus, Ohio office. We didn't mean to exclude him like that. That's just kind of how it happened. But we've got a really deep bench that is focused on municipal projects. We don't like to get into really profound philosophical statements about what we do. The reality is our firm exists to serve communities and make them better. 95+% of our work is in the public sector. Of our current workload, about 70% is municipal facilities, so police, fire, public works, village hall. We also do quite a bit of recreation. We have been working with the Dundee Township Park District over the last several years on some of their projects. But our goal is to really discover what is unique, what is special about each community we work for, and deliver an architectural solution that is appropriate for that community, reflects their values, hits the budget, and performs well for generations to come. With that, I'll turn it over to Mark to talk about some more things on police.
You know, when you hire an architecture firm to do a police station, it's we would recommend you bring in somebody that has expertise in doing it, many years of experience. And so we've, learned a number of trends. And I think what we really like about working with any municipal organizations, we learn from you folks. The ideas we get are after meeting with multiple chiefs and deputy chiefs and village board members and all that. So some of them that you see up there, I'm not going to read over every single one, but these are really key to this type of building. Obviously a civic identity. The days of the 70s kind of dark fortress-like police buildings, unwelcoming, those are gone. It's more of a community center, a beacon, if you will. That leads to a lot of community spaces. Obviously, this building needs to have efficient operations. We're finding a lot of them. If you're in a smaller building, you're all together on one floor, and suddenly you come with a 1 or 2 story building, there is a concern that people may not be as together as they were. So I always talk about a one-team culture, so we will make sure that our design reflects something along that line. Officer wellness, you're going to see the light, healthy materials. Living room, that's something we learned from a chief, a year or so ago in Michigan. He brought that up to us. We've been to a conference and said, with the mental health and wellness and all that, it's very important that we have a space to decompress. So he says, if staff has had a rough evening or seen some unpleasant things, we want a room, he calls it like a no uniform room, a room where they can kind of go, decompress, talk about what they just went through before they go home. Lots of other things in there. I don't want to get into them all. Obviously, evidence detention, secure is important. Collaboration, we're doing a lot more of the open spaces. We'll have police concourses with open seating and furniture and things like that. So it's really even though there's different departments or groups within, it's really to get kind of this everybody working together. So I'm not going to read them all, but I think that kind of gives you a gist. Now let's talk a little bit about the process here. I think, Andy, we were discussing this. So we have broken down the project, if you select this, into 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Every phase, every step along the way has stakeholder engagement. So the document you see on the left, we call the meeting matrix. We're going to make one of those from every phase. So the first phase is really programming. Now, we know you've already obviously done this, so we're going to really call more of a verification phase. But we do a meeting matrix that lists, date, time, place, who's attending, what it is. It's color-coded. If something's in red, it means it's a meeting. If something's in blue, it's going to be a deliverable or something that we're going to give to you. And it is a living document. But when we start out with the phase 1, we're going to already outline all of the meetings and the tasks staff, so everybody who's part of this group understands what's happening. And things will change, things will move, and that's just life, but we will always accommodate that. We can do a questionnaire process if you like. We do it sometimes we don't, but we develop questionnaires for various segments, including police. And if that's something that you want input from your staff, we can send those out first. And then it's always good in the process to have similar facility tours. So we'll take you to other projects that we've done, others that maybe we haven't, but just there's nothing like seeing something in 3 dimensions. So if you go to the next one. So the first phase I'm going to talk about is really the design process in phase 1. 4 simple kind of tasks. The first one is the program or space needs validation. Again, we're not going to start from square one. We're going to start from your previously completed space needs, but through a series of meetings. And we might do it in a 2 or 3 day charrette. We might do it scheduled in longer meetings, but typically hour and a half per group. So whether it's the group of detectives and a little break, then we come back with patrol and so on. We'll make sure that everything you guys were planning recently is current and meets your current needs. At that point, we will work on that, and actually Lee's going to be helping us with cost estimates, right? Like in a square footage. Right. Yeah. We do not want to draw anything until we have a handle on the budget. The last thing we want to do is draw something that's too big or too much or not what your budget needs to be. So when we complete the space needs program, Lee and her team will develop some cost estimates. We'll be able to present them to you. You'll see, yeah, keep on going. Great. If you don't, we'll go back to the process. We will do conceptual design alternatives. So if you look at the graphic in the lower left, this we call a bubble diagram. Every colored, rectangle or circle there aligns with a heading on our space needs program. Then we refine that into more of a blocking diagram, like you'll see. And eventually, you'll see something in a 3-dimensional sketch like that, plans and elevations. Again, Lee's there doing preliminary cost estimating, and really when we're done with this process, we have the scope, budget, exterior appearance, and you guys say, yeah, you've hit it, you've got it defined, and then we'll move to phase 2. Oh, this is a good example. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a lot of flat elevations, maybe some colored pencils, some renderings, some markers, things like that. In today's world, everything we do is modeled, in a software program called Revit, or you maybe heard the engineering term BIM, Building Information Modeling. This is the level of renderings that we do, and we will actually have these completed at that phase so that you guys can really understand what you're getting. We don't wait till later in the phase. We will continue to refine and develop, but these are all different building types. They're all municipal, of course, but different styles. I think as Andy showed earlier, we don't really have a set style we define for the clients. This is just kind of an example of what the outside visualization. Now,
yeah, so then phase 2 is where we kind of take that initial concept and take it from there all the way across to execution of the building. And within that, all these, kind of like basic services, there's a series of steps kind of outlined. And then probably half an hour going between each one. Please don't. But between each of these, we're trying to make the process streamlined, that all the stakeholders have a say, and then that we're stopping along the way to make sure that we're on budget, that we're hitting all the program requirements. And so really what we're doing is we're taking the program phase 1 and then going from schematic design with some more like the renderings you saw on the previous slide, and taking that through construction documents and permitting. So throughout that process, we're managing code review, we're integrating our consultants, we're doing specification, making sure multiple options within each of the divisions, so that come bid day, we've got some flexibility, we get a lot of bidders, and that type of thing. So throughout the entire process, I don't want to say weekly meetings, but they could be weekly, they might be more or less, depending on our side is building a robust schedule for QA, QC, and we're making sure that we're crossing all our T's, dotting all our I's as we're going along the way, because we can, whether it's Revit or SketchUp or many tools at our disposal to see what the building looks like before we even draw anything. But even along the way, something simple as exporting room schedules and take off things with parameters for the other team departments to do their cost estimating. It all works to open up that communication and make sure everyone's excited, aligned, and that you put a shovel in the ground and going, we're not going to have mistakes, we're going to go smoothly, limit any types of change orders and buys beyond. So with that said, it's sort of, as a project architect, that's sort of where I kind of, a lot of the heavy lifting is once we start presenting this phase two.
We do like to talk about sustainable design. Sustainability is important to us as architects, but it's not something we feel like that we should shame you into or force you into. We realize that the right level of sustainability and green is a different answer for each community we work in. So we want to work with you to discover what that right level is for West Dundee's values and vision. So we want to meet you where you are. If you want us to start to look at some more advanced things like net zero energy, like adding more renewable energy to the project in the form of solar panels, and looking at grant opportunities for doing that, we certainly can. But I think it's very important for us to convey to you that it's not our place to pressure you into this if it's something that is not a vision and value of the village.
There's a lot of bullets on there, which you're not gonna go over all, but there's one little anecdote I wanted to share with you, and it's the last one that says opportunities for reclaimed materials. We always look for interesting things like that. Standard sustainable design, water conservation, indoor air quality, low voltage, EV vehicles, things like that. 8-9 years ago, I was doing the Village of Arlington Heights police station, and I wanted to use a lot of wood. So you can see the inside. There's a community room. We have wood beams, trusses, trim, etc. I also know that they had a lot down Emerald Ash Board felled trees. Public Works, like you showed me yourself, I got thousands of these things. You want to do something with them? Well, years before, I was working in Wilmette, and Wilmette was the first community to get the Emerald Ash Board. And their village president said, you got to do something with this. So we made built-in tables and counters and things like that out of this. So then when this came along, and we were doing a more traditional style, we said, what can we make it out of? We could make everything out of it. So when you see the trim, when you see that wood deck, when you see the panels, when you see the beams, that is all made from local. And I've got a long-term relationship with the window company out of Wausau, Wisconsin. And I said, hey, could you make a bulletproof window, a wood-clad or aluminum-clad wood window out of bulletproof material? And his brother-in-law or somebody knew a kiln and a lumber yard, and so they went to Arlington Heights, picked up the trees on the flatbeds, took them down, cut them down into the shapes to make the windows, and all the trim and all that. And all those windows you see there are basically made out of trees from people's backyards, and they are completely energy efficient, bullet resistant. So that's the kind of opportunities that we like to look for above and beyond what you consider your standard sustainable. So, thanks, Mark.
So we just want to quickly touch base on interior design as well with the building. So we know there's a lot that goes into programming and the architecture and the exterior of the building, but there's also a lot that happens in the interior. And we like to work collaboratively in our office, and we think that's one thing that benefits you is that we as designers are brought in on the process very early with the schematic design, if not earlier. It helps kind of collaborate together with the team and get the design and process so that Lee, when she's doing her estimating, knows what our expectations are for the level of finishes and materials in the building, so there's no later in the day down the process that weren't expected. But one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that I myself, have been doing this for 20 years, some of the other designers in our office, we know these types of facilities, we know that they are used 24/7 out of the year. We know the expectation of the materials and finishes. side. As Mark mentioned earlier, there's a lot on employee well-being. How do we work with that? How do we look at how we can design the space to incorporate that, so that a lot of that comes with colors, textures, and lighting to promote a space of peace and calm, but also a productive space. Durability and longevity, very important when it comes to finishes in a fire station, or sorry, a police station. Also very important. Low maintenance is also an important factor to look at. The last thing we want to do is have a lot of staff working about, maintaining the building, having to spend a lot of time working on that. And then we also talk about ease of replacement. So we realize a lot of these facilities are built with taxpayer dollars. Keep that in mind as we're designing them. We know we don't want to design with the most trendy things that you're going to come in and replace in potentially 3 to 5 years. We know that the perception of that would not be well. So we always look at materials and finishes that are going to last you for a long time. Durable edges, corners, countertops, very important. Impact-resistant materials. We know things that happen in detention holding is not what's going to be happening where staff is working on a daily basis. Us with you. Okay. As we work our way through finishes, we just threw this slide in here just to kind of show you, as Mark mentioned earlier, we have a lot of the exterior visualizations. We will do the same thing on the interior. We will take the exact finishes and materials that you've selected from the building and put them on an interior view so you can see exactly what the inside of the building is going to look like. So whether there's still images like this or a literal fly through of the entire building that shows all the materials and finishes, this is the next one.
So I wanted to make sure that I highlighted a few key things here. We've done a lot of estimating support and construction planning support for the Williams team. We have a dedicated team of ex-engineers and project managers on the construction side that we moved into our estimating team. About 15 dedicated. Their entire job is to estimate jobs. They'll estimate 10 to 15 projects. A lot of really current on all the different types of products that go into exactly what they're costing right now. Not everybody is cut out to do police. Actual construction work. We do have a dedicated municipal estimator that I have been working with for 20 years. Spent a lot of time together with Frank. He is the guy that has helped us with a number of different. Our job, essentially, and our example up here on the screen, is to price a lot of different options for you, give you much data to make the best decisions possible for the village. Our job is to listen and help the team establish what those stars would be, what prices. Besides pricing the actual different configurations, also help the team understand what the overall project schedule is going to be, that preliminary phasing, as well as logistics, and that we understand what those impacts would be in the estimates that we put together, project budget. And then at the bottom there, it talks about cash flow and procurement. One of the things that all villages need to consider is how's cash flow. Finance folks map that out so they understand how they need to map the funding for the project. And then we did put together a very high-level initial concept estimate in partnership with the Williams team at what the current program is reflecting. I know that that'll be validated in the next phase to make sure that it's on track. Big picture, we wanted to give you a snapshot of how roughly those dollars would break down into these larger categories for a project of this scale. Confident that the budget that you've set for the program that you're looking at is very doable.
Thanks, Lee. We want to go just very quickly through some of our experience. Again, you've seen some of this in your packet, but we want to highlight some of the great meaningful work we've done for police departments all across northern Illinois and beyond. So all of those up there, I promise I won't read them to you, are folks that we've worked on police facilities for, planned police facilities for, again, with our own in-house expertise. go through a few. I'm the principal in charge of a very large new police headquarters for Schaumburg right now. Actually, Joe and I are working on that together. It's a complicated project, a very large project, but there are a number of dominoes in the village of Schaumburg's facility improvement plan that are falling to make this happen. We are building a new village hall for them right now on the site of their old village hall. To make that happen, the village bought an office building a few blocks west of Woodfield Mall. And they're using that office building as a temporary village hall right now while the new village hall is under construction. Once they move into that village hall, we'll be able to demolish the office building and build this police station there. So in addition to just a lot of really great features in terms of training, real-time command, a lot of aspects for not only community but officer wellness, just a lot of thought into how this is happening, when it's happening, and making sure that these separate but interrelated projects really go off without a hitch.
This is a project we're doing in Kalamazoo Township, so there's sort of the unincorporated area surrounding or in mixed Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's, you can see it's about 79,000 square foot police and 21 or so of township also. It's a little over 100,000 square foot. We've got kind of a clear shared space, an obvious entry area, and you walk in and it's centered on a nice public boardroom slash community room. Very simple wayfinding. Left is the police side, right is the township side. So, you know, we've got a lot of natural materials, but low maintenance materials, natural stone, and then other materials that may look like wood but actually aren't wood. But we're doing kind of a, you know, it's sort of a crisp, clean, contemporary take on a rustic building. So it's going to have kind of the natural color palette and materials, but it's done in a little more contemporary type of layout.
Department of Police was a completed project. A couple of the design parameters were to match the existing village hall. Prior to that, the existing police station was there and it had to remain operational. And over the years, what was originally a library became a public safety building to the village hall west there. And then it's kind of ad hoc onto the original police facility. So the challenge there were the phasing, keeping everything. And so once it's complete, you know, an interesting story here is the village hall large entry and the new police entry, even went as far as to work with, in this case, Tech Quarry, where that stone from the original village hall came from, and they were able to find a similar vein, and getting that photo now, the only thing that remains from some of the additions from the 80s or previous 90s is that center, that tower. So overall, yeah, it
Oak Terrace Police Station, this was completed in 2015. 1,000 square feet, similar to what Joe just said, this was also built on an existing site where the existing police facility was. A lot of coordination between keeping them up and functioning as well as building on the site. And then it grew into being a police station, but then also ended up turning into where the village was going to have their board meetings, as you can see now. So that was also used for dual purposes. And then when it was not in service to the board, there was a wall that came across that separated the dais from the rest of the space, and then that was used for police for all their training purposes.
And then finally, Carroll Stream, we completed about 5 or 6 years ago a new village hall and police station. It was actually a very, very heavy remodeling and addition of their existing facility. Two things notable about this project: the overall square footage is very similar to your program, and this was done on an extremely tight budget. I think it's important for us to convey to you that we're able to meet you at whatever your budget reality is, and that we are not an architect that is going to cross our arms and say a police facility must be at least this much money. We're able to creatively get things done You've asked us, I promise we're about to get to some really good stuff, some ideas about your project, but you did ask us to clarify our fee structure. As Mark and Joe alluded to, we suggest a two-phase approach, one that just gets the scope and budget in alignment so you as the village board have the confidence to say, yes, we're moving this project forward. And then phase two of that is the implementation, or what we would call traditional basic services. We believe in one fixed fee for the entire project with all the consultants, no extras, no surprises, so you know and the community knows exactly what this costs. We would estimate for that phase one a budget between $125,000 and $135,000. The only reason we have a range is because we've included survey and geotechnical in that, so your soil borings, the surveying you may need, and we don't always know exactly where that number is going to be. For phase two, we'd be proposing a fee of equivalent to 6.5% of the construction cost. We believe this is a very competitive fee, knowing the marketplace. We show a graph there showing how that's broken out by phase of those services. The majority of our work happens in construction documents, but 27% of our work as architects also happens during the construction phase, making sure that what is designed is getting built and the quality that you paid for is happening. So that's just a little bit more about our fee structure. Manager Cavallaro also asked us to talk a little bit about construction approaches. Generally, we see projects like this built in two different ways. There's a traditional approach of design, bid, build, where we design the whole project, put documents together, bid it to a general contractor. More common these days is our clients hiring a construction manager early in the process to advise the team on constructability, on cost savings, and on ways to potentially accelerate the project and give an assurance that the project is going to be on budget. So it's really two separate companies working together that are directly contracted with you. If you are interested in the construction management approach, we do include that request for proposal process and helping you through that as part of our services. We have a vested interest in making sure that we have the right partner to build the project. And we also personally and professionally believe that it's really important that your construction manager and your architect are not the same company. There are some companies out there that do that. We think there are some inherent checks and balances in making sure the architect is working directly for you, the construction team is working directly with you, the architect is comfortable telling our owner when something is not constructed properly, the constructor is comfortable telling the owner when something isn't shown on the documents that needs to be. So that level of transparency and openness happens best when you have separate firms doing that. And finally, we get to the good stuff, talking about your projects. We have some thoughts on sites and some concepts, and we'll be ready for questions and answers.
All right, so we've taken a map. Each one of those dotted circles is a 1 mile radius, so you can see the Spring Hill Mall is literally about as close to center of town as you can get, so that's really encouraging. So you've got a good spot for it, like that. And I think you identified a couple of sites. There's what, 1 or 2 buildings left out there, not a whole lot left. We looked at the southeast, site number 1, and the southwest. The southeast, it looks like it's going to remain on the, if you go to that next image. We did a little digging, and looks like there's been some comprehensive planning. So it looks like the southeast would be mainly big box retail parking, where the southwest, number 2, I'm assuming that's multifamily or condos or something like that. So we just figured for tonight's purposes, what we wanted to do is we didn't want to design the building for you tonight. We wanted to show you how our process would actually be implemented so you folks would get comfortable with the kind of graphics and process. So for tonight's purposes, we assumed site number 2, but again, anything is So as we mentioned earlier, you've got like the concept plan, the bubble diagram, which leads to something along like this. I think the RFP had mentioned, a couple-story building with a basement. We can design it in multiple levels if you want. The inherent thing with police is a lot of space really needs to be on the first floor. Whether it's detention, public, community room, patrol. Yeah, investigations can go upstairs, but even evidence. So it tends to want to be on the first So we figure if you have the room, it's usually a single story saves significant money, especially if you go true single story. We don't need an elevator, we don't need stairs. There is potential for a full or a partial basement. So really, once we were to get into program verification, if you say we just really want a 3-story building or basement and 2-story, by all means. But what we wanted to show tonight is a concept, if you will. It is a 1-story building. So this is just kind of, we basically laid out the adjacent spaces based on the program, some of our own thoughts, conceptual site plans, if you go to the next one. And what we really wanted to show you is we developed the plans. We turned them into a program called SketchUp, which is exactly what it is. So, you know, we're going to show you just 3 options tonight. Again, not to sway you any one way or to make you think at all that the building's designed, but this is the kind of work that we will bring to you. Because as I mentioned earlier, we think it's a lot easier for everybody, ourselves included, to see a building in 3 dimensions in all views than flat elevations in building sections. So, this is an option if you wanted to do a little more forward look. You know, you've got a beautiful building we're sitting in tonight, and this is what something like that could actually look like. So we take a little more detailed rendering, and we would eventually have the model in all of it. So you get a multiple view. But for tonight, that's kind of one way this could look out. There's a second option, kind of a transitional, almost a kind of a flat roof prairie style, you know, long, low, masonry, probably punched openings as opposed to large expanses of glass. So, you know, everybody knows prairie style, you're comfortable with it, everybody knows who Frank Lloyd Wright is. So again, a building this size, it doesn't usually work with edged roofs that easily. It can be done, as we'll show you in the next one, but for this scheme, we said, here's another way. So we would come to you once we have a floor plan that's working and a site plan that's working and show you options like this. And then eventually that could turn into something to this level of detail to really help you visualize it. And then, oh yeah.
Mark, I just wanted to point out, those are not our vehicles. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Didn't know West End was so fancy, but yes, nice cars up there.
Oh, those Mercedes now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Remember
I
yours?
think I might have been, it was a Porsche, yes,
Yeah.
some vehicles. I drove a Bronco tonight, just putting that out.
Okay.
Last one would be more of a traditional, you know, you see your gabled roofs, your pitched roofs, your hip roof structures. To bring some of it down, we're showing kind of a flat spot there. So, you know, you get a more traditional look, you do get some height out of it, but, you know, look, there's pros and cons to everything. We can't put a lot of mechanical systems up in that space. But again, this hopefully is just sort of illustrating to you that we do not have a set style. The style is going to be what the folks around this table really want the building to represent. So, with that being said, as I mentioned, we will do a fly around. So this is the level that we would do, and we just picked option 1. No preference on our part, but just want to show you this is the kind of graphics model that you would get from us. And we've done this on multiple projects. Sometimes we come to meetings with like the Revit model, which is a 3D model. Somebody's laptop, and somebody goes, hey, can we go in and see it tonight? We drop a camera into such and such room. We can just do it right then and there. We can kind of section through it. People say, well, I don't understand the 2 stories, and we'll do it live. I did a board presentation a couple years back for schematic design for North Aurora, for Public Works, which is almost done being built. And the village manager said, that video's fine, stand there, run it, and you know what? If they have questions, they have questions, but let it go for a minute. So we let it go, 60, 70 seconds, and the board's like, no really questions, very happy with it, keep going. So it's just a much easier tour than bringing you flat elevations or like I used to in my old days, bring a cardboard model or something like that. So this is kind of the level of graphics and work product that if you do bring this on board, that you'll see from us.
And then just to talk a little bit about schedule to wrap up, we do believe that if you make a decision and get a firm on board, let's just say around the first of the year, that this is a project that can be designed and documented and be ready to go out to bid about a year from. It's our experience, and Lee can probably validate this, that you get the best possible pricing at the very beginning of the year when sending things out for bid. So we want to tee you up for the best possible bid results, get the most contractors, get the best pricing, which tends to happen at the beginning of the year. So with all the steps in front of us, even though we've got a lot of ideas process to be intentional. You've only got one shot to get this right, so we want to do it well. We want to be thorough. But we do really believe that you'll be ready to bid the project, assuming everything stays on track about this time next year. Begin construction once the weather breaks in 2027, and probably between a 12 to 16 month construction schedule. As we know more, that could the pencil could be sharpened on that. But that's about what we would see for schedule on the project to get things done and give you the best possible value. So we know that was a lot. We know it was a little more than 25 or 30 minutes, but we really wanted to make sure we explain everything we're about, our experience, our ideas for your project, and what makes us unique. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Andy.
Me?
No, that Andy.
Are there any questions?
I've got a couple questions. So, and I'll ask these to the other architect as well. So, you know, the site we're looking at, as you saw, is at the former mall, and you know, our intention is for that to be, you know, mixed use, residential, commercial, institutional, and to be, you know, a significant sort of pedestrian orientation, a lot of public spaces, and so, you know, how would you, you know, police stations often aren't in that sort of setting. So how would you design, or how should the design reflect that situation and sort of work with the
Great question. I
community?
can start. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any ideas, please feel free to chip in. I would say that although there are certain elements of a police station that are not necessarily compatible with everything, it is entirely possible to design a police facility that's welcoming and fits within a context. We really like the idea of the southwestern site for a couple different reasons. One is that it's got a nice relationship to the green space in front of the movie theater that could potentially play off and have it become a space that can be activated for all village events. It's a big lawn. I think there's a lot of things you could do with it. And if there was a relationship between the community room of the police department and that green and that movie theater, now you've got something that's really benefiting the whole community. From our standpoint, when we looked at the two sites, the other reason for landing on the southwest site was simply because if you have a concept plan for big box retail on the southeast corner, that's where you're generating tax revenue for the village. And that's a much more visible site. If I'm a developer of a Woodman's or something like that that wants to go somewhere, you're probably choosing that site. So those are some of the things that we thought about in terms of choosing not only the site, but tying the building to the site into a bigger context.
The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, you know, they look different today than they did 30, 40 years ago, right? I mean, they just do. Everything we're showing has a lot of windows, glass, we're doing so many combo facilities, and we're doing all sorts of combo facilities. We're just turned in a design competition the other day for a combination street department and police training. You know, so, you know, the bottom line is the more, if you can package something together, you get some cost savings. Well, these are all public buildings. So again, as I mentioned earlier, glass, daylighting, you know, we tour a lot of old police stations. People are in the basement. People are buried in the center of the building. They're dark. They're inward looking. You know, there's going to be a community room here, right? And you want that front and center. So the building itself will be used by the public, and so it's no longer the place you don't want to go to, because honestly, you don't want to. This is the police station. It's going to be a part of the community and the fabric. And you know, like I said, some good ideas in landscape site ideas, and just windows, modern materials, welcoming, open, bright, you know, cheerful.
And then from sustainability side, I know you recognize, or you basically, you know, don't want to sort of force one way or the other, but certainly there's a sort of a cost benefit to that. And I think so many times we focus on the construction side, we don't think so much about the operational side. And so could you talk a little bit about why, you know, sustainable design may be good for us from a resiliency standpoint, as well as from a sort of long-term cost control?
I'll try to pack this into a couple minutes, because I could probably talk for another half hour. But, you know, we don't believe sustainability and hitting a budget are goals that are diametrically opposed. I think that there are real opportunities to introduce energy efficiency into projects that we can demonstrate a payback and have good discussions about during the budgeting process. So what does it mean if we add another inch of insulation to the walls, or 2 more inches of insulation to the roof? We can project what those cost savings are going to be out over a series of years and show what the payback would be. We also want to look at renewable energy where it makes sense. Solar panels on a police or a municipal facility are a real thing with a demonstrated payback between 10 or 15 years. You're never going to power an entire police facility with it, but you can take 30 or 40% off the entire load. And those are things that we've got some nice experience helping our municipalities get some grants for. So we just think that, again, we don't want to force anything onto you that you're not comfortable with, but we certainly want to explore the options with you. Say, here's what it looks like to look at some renewable energy. Here's what it looks like for increased energy efficiency. Here's what it looks like for some reclaimed materials. And just have those conversations. So wherever you decide, whatever your answer is, you're confident that we've explored all the options.
I'll add that too, talk about some tools we're using. We're working hand in hand with our MVP consultants to make some of those decisions, whether or not, depending on, we work with some municipalities that don't pay a lot or there's nothing. Let's look at what's the cost for the equipment or XYZ versus the ABC, and does it make sense to go that route and look at the long term? But it doesn't always have to be sustainability, but sometimes they kind of dovetail together.
Tag on that part of our job, when I put that matrix up there of different scenarios, those examples, how to configure the building, but a whole nother series of options that we price. The window systems, the insulation, what are the mechanical systems that we have a high level lighting control system, what kind of energy savings does that have versus the emission? That's a big part of what we do. We have priced
Think of the vehicles?
over the vehicles with
Roofs.
like a roof shelter. It's a good compromise of not maybe necessarily having a full tempered garage for all vehicles, but you can still shelter the vehicles from snow and ice, but still have a place to go. Geothermal, we're doing geothermal right now. Standard HVAC systems system, and with that the premium that we pay for geothermal.
And then to wrap up, Trustee Price, you mentioned the word resiliency, and I think that's a very important component of sustainability. The idea that we are building a building that is not a 20 or 25-year building, but a multi-generation building that has at least a 50 and hopefully longer year lifespan is itself a sustainable approach. Something with some permanence, with the kinds of constructions, the kinds of elements that Carrie mentioned, that will keep the building functioning well, looking good over time. To not have to do another remodeling project every 5 or 10 years is in itself a very sustainable approach.
Were any of you around during Division 9, 10, or 11 in Cook County?
Curious if you look at.
Oh, Cook County Jail, and when they were building.
Oh,
Okay, I was just curious. I was in the plumbing industry for many years, so doing Division 9, 10, and 11, and you want to talk about something plopped right in the middle of the neighborhood, it's 26 in California.
I can
So,
imagine.
yeah, and how they move their prisoners is underground.
Oh, yeah?
That's how everything moves. Yeah. So we want to talk
Bond out
sustainability.
is a big issue. The design
aware. Yeah. Very aware of, yes.
That's a very, if you want to tour a place, you can get in there. You need to tour it.
Scare me straight, yes.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Questions? Doesn't look like it. If questions come up, they can send them to you and pass them on to you.
Yep, absolutely. Well, if we're going to wrap up, once again, we want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about your project. This is something we are really excited about. Hopefully you see our enthusiasm, our passion, our experience. Why would you consider Williams? I know you've talked to a number of really good firms, and we don't talk about other firms. We talk about the advantage and the proposition we can give to you. That's 51 years of experience, no learning curve, because we have the experience and the expertise to put together police facilities in-house. Hopefully you've seen a glimpse at our creativity and our ability to show you multiple options and communicate those options well to not only you, but to the entire community. We're very proud of our document quality. We're proud to say our change orders on new projects are less than 0.5%. The industry average is around 3 to 4. We are very, very proud of that quality. That's what comes from having really experienced and licensed architects working on your projects. But most of all, the reason I think all of us are in this line of work is because we care deeply about our communities. We want to make our communities better. We want to improve the built environment, improve the quality of life, and help all of you as trustees of the Village of West Dundee leave a legacy. And we'd be honored to have the opportunity to do that for you. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there.
Have you ever been down to? Have you ever been down to Cook County? Yeah.
What time did I
Yeah.
care to recall?
Yeah.
Sarah.
Good night.
Planning to discuss tonight?
Chris asked that we kind of hold a discussion at a later date so he could participate, but, I mean, if anyone's got any thoughts, based on initial thoughts or whatever, obviously we can discuss them tonight, whatever you prefer.
Just, I guess, just talk, off the top, what I appreciated more about Williams was more personable. I don't know how else to put it, but I thought the First Accordion were very formal, as they should be, but it just seemed like this group would be more comfortable to work with, and they are almost all local, so they appreciate having shopped at Spring Hill Mall, the area. They're familiar with it, and I think because they're in the area, they will work harder to do a good job for us and make it all work, which I'm sure they will. Both firms would, but I just felt more comfortable with them. And they made a point about not having everything all in-house contract. And a construction manager would be separate. I think it's good to have that diversity and have extra eyes on things.
I think it's good to have the diversity, but I also think it's good that they're in-house and that they're in constant communication with one another, because in dealing with a general contractor during a lot of different projects in my many years in the plumbing industry, it's not very easy to do. Sometimes there's a lot of miscommunication between them and the architects and or engineers. A lot of different blame is putting on, you know, he said, she said, whatever. Ran into that in more projects that I can ever imagine. There's, not to say that there's not a lot of good firms out there, because there really are, but I like the fact that it's all in-house. It's just that one company and they're all responsible and all talking to one another.
Is there a significant difference in price? I know they were one showed numbers, one showed percentages. Are they comparable, or where do they land?
In my opinion, Corrigan Clark will be the more expensive of your options.
We haven't gotten fees from either one, no.
No, but
So, yeah.
Williams gave us the 6.5% and 125 and 135.
Yeah.
So they actually gave us numbers for this project, so. We don't know, I have no idea what that looks like for Corrigan Clark, but I can tell you they will be on the higher side of the fee scale.
I like the concepts of the first one, the openness of the floor plans, some of the renderings they showed of some of the buildings that they did, and the openness, etc. The ability to meet and put things in spaces that resonated with me. On the second one, I did like the fact that they were all local, and they had a job at TJ Maxx, or you grew up on Bonkoski and 31. You know, you've got know the area, right? So I think, Andy, to your point, that this group knows the area. The second one had, I think, better concepts and use of give me a budget, I'll figure out how to put it all together and hit it, right? I like that as part of the first one. Both of them I thought were there's no one that's either one, you know. Both of them would be good.
Yeah, a lot of it's gonna come down to, you know, the individual design and the input we get from police and the sergeants and detectives and et cetera in terms of layout and the configurations. And so I think whether it's open or not open, I think, you know, the visualization is going to be there. I'm going to strongly encourage that the board, you know, no matter who we select, ends up with a couple site visits for existing facilities and before we kind of get too far down the road, so you get a good understanding of what they actually physically look like and what they can be, and you know, use that as part of the design process.
Yeah, and I think talking to the police chiefs and stuff too, just because, you know, what it's, you know, you can visit them and stuff, but until you talk to them, like, how does it work on a day-to-day basis?
Right.
And, you know, all of those things I think is, you know, 5 years from now.
Yeah, we've done some of that to date, and I think we've seen some of the what not to do's and what to do's. I think, you know, we want to encourage the board to participate in that and see that also.
What's the size of that facility in South Elgin? Because I go past that a lot, and I just, so I can get a visual
Scale.
of size.
About the same, what we're looking at.
And are we definite on either site 1 or site 2 as
No.
far as placement? Okay.
No, we haven't. I mean, that was a conversation that Director Scott and I were having about what makes location-wise. I think both have merit. It's, you know, as we've said from the get-go, it looks like this project will be the first out of the ground in the Spring Hill Mall area, and it's going to have to fit within the overall master plan. You know, the one that Williams uses is the old Sizemore piece right of Atlanta, so the relevance is nice visually, but layout-wise, I don't think it really fits. So whoever we work with, I think, is going to have to work with us on that overall layout and the concept and how it fits.
Yeah, I think that's part of the challenge, is having a sense of like what our actual master plan is, and also recognizing we want a master plan to have some flexibility, because, you know, it's going to be built over time, and so Yeah.
Part of that is, I think we're gonna, we've got a sense of what that, the conceptual layout's going to be. Now you're gonna have to start, coloring in certain decisions.
Right, right.
I liked your question though, Tom, about fitting in within community,
Yeah.
right? And,
It's a unique location, and I think
It
that's
is.
key for, yeah.
It's gonna be key, and having conference facilities or something that the community can share, I think that's gonna be critical to doing what. Because immediately the community's gonna say, what's in it for me, right? And you've gotta show that this is open for all people, right?
Yeah, and just, kind of break down tension between police and the public and stuff like that. And you're doing a great job at that, actually, I think, but, it's that's there, and that's a real thing, so I think this could potentially help that, so. In terms of the two firms, I think the level of sophistication seemed a little bit higher with, Corrigan Clark, but I think they both could be good firms. The kind of where they came in on their budgets within 1% was pretty impressive for each of the sites. I thought that was good. I thought, the notion of sustainability and kind of the benefits to us as a community seemed a little better with Corrigan Clark as well. But again, I think that I've seen a lot of Williams work too, and I know they both do good. And so I think, price definitely will be a consideration. I don't think it should be the only consideration, but yeah. And I think you mentioned, Mark, too, just sort of the variance in their sort of design styles was better too.
Yeah, I felt the second one was a little bit more mundane and, not really Frank Lloyd Wright, right? We're got a specific feel here, right? And I thought that some of the renderings on the first one, and it was either like very one of the designs looked really cool that they did.
Yeah, they do.
Cool equals expensive.
There you go.
Right.
You could make the whole
that's
thing
where
a glass cube if you wanted to, but it would.
I'm going to caution the
Cost a
board.
million.
Well, that's why I asked, what's the price, right? And
I mean-
am I willing to pay, I'm gonna know, I don't know how we're gonna.
Well, there's three prices actually. There's the price of what we pay for the services, there's the price of the building, and then there's the price of operating the building, so.
But just recognize
we
once
gotta think
again,
of all of those.
this will be the first project out of the ground. You really, there's going to be a cost for setting the tone for the quality and expectations of the development that we are going to demand and expect. So, and I think either firm can deliver on that. A lot of it is, trying to make sure that the board has a clear understanding that, we may be, not, looking at a precast and flat roof type building for purposes of fitting in and setting the development tone for the entire area.
Oh, yeah, because if you set, you want to set the bar high, at the same time, you don't want to set it too high, because then the rest, everything else grows exponentially as far as cost factors too. A lot to digest.
Just a food for thought, since the main discussion will happen, the mayor's here, but, I went through probably about 8 months of the design phase of this whole thing with Schaberg, and part of that, not just me being personally involved with it, but also, like you mentioned, talking to other chiefs and deputy chiefs and commanders and admin people and, logistics people and things like that. No matter what, I mean, with the 8 or 9 firms, it would have been the case, but certainly down to the last 2 here, you're not going to get a lemon. You're going to get an excellent product, no matter what. To me, I think one of the huge things for all of us is who is going to be the easiest to work with. can't understate that just from the experience that I've had with this process so far. And, you know, I'll certainly give, you know, my input with that if asked, but, you know, I think that's gonna be huge. And then just that future vision of, like, we understand that what we designed to build right now, no matter what, 6 months after we move in, there's going to be something that comes along that people are gonna say, oh, I wish we would have done this. And it's no fault to the design process, it's just how things change and all that. And, you know, like one example is, you know, everybody talks about training for police. I can say without hesitation that none of the architect firms truly had an understanding of police training because they didn't have a police trainer as part of their team. They use the term training and education classroom stuff interchangeably. We want our facility to be able to, where we're putting up temporary walls, and okay, today the officers are going to go through a training scenario where this is a hotel room at extended stay. We need the ability to do that, and that goes along with the, you know, the part of being able to work with the firm who's going to listen to us instead of just saying, well, no, this is just, we're the experts here, this is how it's going to be done. They need to be able to hear that and make those changes and have that experience with working with police in that case. And then the last thing is just that durability part. Walk around the police station, and any police station, but ours in particular, that the durability, the interior design portion of it can't be overlooked, because, you know, every single police station, except for a couple recently that have been built, they all have the big dents in the wall and the drywall from the gun belts, especially as our waists start to get a little bit wider throughout our careers, perhaps. Just little things like that really can't be overlooked. So, you know, I throw all that out there again just because I've been so intimately involved with it over the last 2 years, really. And I've been taking notes furiously the whole time since that process started, and they do bring different things to the table from those points.
So you've worked with Williams as part of Schaumburg, and then have you worked with Corrigan and Clark ever?
I didn't work directly with Corrigan and Clark. I mean, I should say I only worked with Williams.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to Corrigan and Clark other than just a couple of anecdotal things like the Arlington Heights project, but that's going back a while since Arlington Heights was done. I can say from personal experience, Williams was wonderful to work with. They definitely gave us that thought of, well, yes, we're the experts and we're going to tell you that's a crazy idea. If you really want to do that, it's going to cost an extra $500,000. Like they didn't go the route of, yeah, sure, we can do that for you. It wasn't any of that nonsense, but they also didn't try to shove anything down our throats that, well, no, this is just how you do it. They were very, you know, receptive and flexible.
Okay, I will discuss with Chris putting this on an agenda, and then obviously we can have a further conversation. Is there anything that the board feels they need before they can make a decision?
Pricing, final pricing for wag at it.
I will see what I can get out of them.
Okay, they threw out, if you pick them by January and blah, 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 blah. We're not pushing or rushing, right? We're gonna do it right.
Right.
So we don't need to make a decision by January or February.
No, but I think we want to keep this process going.
Right.
I mean,
That's what I mean, but
you know, the one thing that, you know, Williams threw out this concept of breaking it down into two components, and I think from this board's perspective, it probably is something that makes it a lot more easily digestible to get a good understanding of what that project is, what the costs are, and then have that conversation at that point, because we still have to have this conversation on how are we funding a $25 million public safety center number 3.
So that kind of goes to your question though, Mark, because even Williams was giving us, you know, fee through concept basically, right? And then they would, well, and then I guess they had a percent beyond that.
Right, I
For
just didn't know how
construction.
the how to compare them, that's.
Yeah.
Because they were throwing some numbers out, I'm like, okay, I can do the, you know, I had the numbers, and I'm like, but I didn't know how to compare that to the first one, you know, how to.
But I think I think the Williams approach is somewhat atypical to the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'll say, probably an approach that we'd all like to get. We don't always get.
Right.
You know, just because you don't know what you're designing until you get through the concept, and yeah, so it's, and I think so I like that if, you know, we're all comfortable with that.
Okay.
Oh, probably not the next meeting, but
No,
maybe the
not the
first one in
16th,
January.
probably the first meeting in January, yeah.
And just to add, a lot of it comes from our input of, this is our budget, we don't wanna go over 25 million or something. That's what both of them said, we'll work within your budget.
Right, and
So-
for clarity purposes, our budget is based on the FGM evaluation, based on a standard, I think, 200, 250 per square foot cost of construction. So it's not, there's nothing that's etched in stone. It's just based on those to give us general parameters of where we're at.
Yeah, and they both seem very good about talking about, you know, basically costing all along the way, so that, you know, we don't have any surprises down the road. So.
Hey, there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. No nays. We're adjourned. See you next week, 7 o'clock, right?
7 o'clock next week, yes.
I will call you Joe.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Pay for.
He's